Hello ladies and gentle ladies, and welcome back to another Minecraft modding tutorial. And in this tutorial we are going to be starting our series for 1.21. So 1.21 released yesterday as of recording this. I'm not sure when it will be as of releasing, but it released yesterday, and we are going to start with the modding tutorial straight away because there isn't too much different from 1.20, but as you may see by the title, we are going to be using Fabric instead of Forge. So there is a whole situation in the modding community at the moment between Fabric, Forge, and NeoForge. I'm not going to go into that too much because I'm sure a lot of people have already heard all of the stuff about it, but if you haven't, I might make a separate video talking about it, but just note that basically Forge is dead-ish, kind of. It's still running fine, actually. I mean, they have updated to 1.21 as well, but for the most part Forge has been replaced by NeoForge, which I am not going to be using for, some reasons, which once again I won't get into. But yeah, we're going to be using Fabric because I believe that's honestly better, in my opinion. And you should see in this tutorial series why I think it's better. But yeah, let's go ahead and just get started with this. So the first thing we're going to need to do is download Java. So we'll come to this page here. All of these links will be linked in the description, of course. So we just want to download the latest LTS as long as that says JDK 21. If it doesn't, then you can go other platforms and versions. And you can just select everything here. So I'm on Windows, I am on x64, we want the JDK, and then we want 21, which is currently LTS. I'm not sure when 22 will become LTS, probably not anytime soon. So we just want 21, and because I'm on Windows, I can select the MSI, but obviously, if you're on Linux or Mac, then I'm sure you know what to get. So I will just save that, and that shouldn't take too long to download there. Whilst that is downloading, though, we can talk about our IDE of choice. So for these tutorials, I'm going to be using IntelliJ. However, feel free to use anything else as long as obviously you know how to use that IDE. So Eclipse will be effectively the same, but we'll just be using IntelliJ because that's kind of the standard, and I think most people already know how to use it. So you'll just need to come to the second link in the description, and on this download page you'll first see it says Ultimate, which you have to pay for, but if you scroll down you'll see Community Edition, which is free, so you just want to download that, and we're going to put that in our download folder as well. That'll take a while longer to download because that's just over half a gig. And whilst that's downloading, we can start up the installer for the JDK. So let's go ahead and do that. So we just want to hit next. And there is something you want to go ahead and do here, and that is set the Java home. So we just want to set that to entire feature like that, and then we can leave this one because that's not important. And then you just want to hit next, and you want to hit install. Now I'm not going to actually install it because I already have it installed, but that's what you would need to do. So I'm just going to cancel that, but just hit install and then finish after that has completed. And it looks like IntelliJ has also completed, so that's great. We can now go ahead and run that too, if it wants to actually say that it's done. There you go. So we can just open that. And whilst this is doing its thing, I should mention that it's very important for these tutorials that you have some knowledge with Java already. So you should already know the basics of Java. That includes, the basic stuff really. So, methods, variables, all that kind of stuff, classes, just object-oriented programming in general. And ideally, you should know about more complex things, so lambdas, generics, those are going to be very, very important. If you know about multi-threading, that's great, because that will be something used somewhat often. And there's some other things as well. It's just very important that you know the basics. If you don't, I will leave some links in the description to some resources that I think are good in my experience and from what I've seen in other people's experience. So I'll leave those in the description. If you are new to Java, I would highly recommend that you do those before starting modding, because otherwise you'll have a very hard time. Believe me, I know that from experience. So yeah, this has completed, so we can just hit next. You can select your install location, of course, so you just want to hit next. And in here, there may be some things you want to do. So what I like to do is I like to add this one. So that means I can just be in any folder and I can right click it and it'll open that folder as an IntelliJ project. That's just very useful. Adding bin folder to path, you can do that if you want. I usually do choose to do that, but you need to restart your computer after doing that. And then I also like to add Gradle, Groovy, KT, KTS, and POM as well. I don't like to do Java because if I want to open a specific Java file, I would just do it in Notepad, to be honest, or maybe VS Code if I'm really needing that. And then I would just hit next, and then I would install. Once again, I'm not actually going to do that because I already have IntelliJ Ultimate installed, so I don't need to install the Community Edition, but you can do that anyway. So let's go ahead and quit. Okay, and once we've done that, we can actually start creating our mod. So you want to come to the third link in the description here, which will be for the template mod generator for Fabric. And basically this will set a bunch of stuff up for us. So here we go, we can choose a name for our mod. So as you'll see, it defaults to template mod, and what we're just going to put is tutorial mod for mine, but obviously call it, you know, whatever yours is. If you put spaces as well, do note that this will actually change your mod ID as well. You can choose to use a custom ID. In fact, we'll do that so that we can so I can show you what the mod ID is. So you just want to hit use custom ID here. So I'm going to call this tutorial space mod, like that. And then for the mod ID, I'm going to put tutorial mod, just like this. And it's very important for the mod ID that you don't have any spaces. You'll see if I do, it says it's an invalid character. Or if I put, you know, random symbols, it says you can't have those. If I put uppercase letters, you can't have those. You can have numbers though, that's fine. It's just important to note that your mod ID should be unique to your mod, but it should also be descriptive for your mod. So this is a tutorial mod, so I call it tutorial mod. If you're making a space mod, you might literally call it space mod. If you were making, you know, think of existing mods, right? So immersive engineering, you would call it immersive engineering. You may even call it immersive underscore engineering. That's fine too. Or even dash, I guess, but underscore is more common. And etc, etc, etc. Once again, I'm just going to keep to tutorial mod. Then you have your package name. So this should be unique to you. Now, you can, if you have a domain, you can use your existing domain for this. So I own the domain turtywurty.dev. So if I go to turtywurty.dev in my browser, you see that this is my website. So I own this specific domain. And because I own that domain, I can now go into the package name and I can put dev.turtywurty. But if you don't own the domain, you can just put whatever you want. It doesn't really matter, as long as it is unique, basically. If you do use someone else's domain, theoretically, you could get in trouble for that. It's highly unlikely, especially in the modding scene. No one is going to, you know, sue you for using their domain for your package name. Like, that would be absurdly ridiculous. But in theory, they could. And if you were to be, worried about that or whatever, you can always fall back to just using your GitHub account as the domain. So for example, you can do either io.github. Your name, so like mine is Daryl30Wordy. You could use that, or you could just do github.daryl real30wordy. You could even do com.github.daryl30wordy if you wanted. That's fine too. I would just go with GitHub, to be honest, because it's shorter, so it's easier if you were to do it like that. So I'm just going to use dev.30wordy for mine, of course, but you can choose yours. And then after that, you want to go ahead and put dot, and then basically your mod ID after that. So our mod ID is just tutorial mod, but yours may be something different, of course. I would highly advise that you do something different, not just tutorial mod. It doesn't really matter, because obviously this is just a tutorial, as you may guess. Then here we have the advanced options. So obviously if you are more familiar with Kotlin and you want to use Kotlin, then feel free to select the Kotlin programming language. I am not going to be touching Kotlin with a, from any distance. So I'm not going to select that. Mojang mappings, I personally prefer to use Mojang mappings. But for these tutorials, we are going to be using yarn mappings just because that's the standard in the Fabric community, unfortunately. I don't personally agree with that. I don't think it should be the standard, but it is. So just to keep these tutorials more universal, I am going to be sticking with yarn, and we're not going to use the official mappings. By the way, if you do choose to use the official mappings, do note that these tutorials will not really work for you. The actual methods and the class names and the fields will all be completely different if you're using Mojang mappings. There is a great tool that you can use, Linky, and with that you can actually translate. So say we're on yarn, for example, we can translate that to where is it Mojang via intermediary. And then you can obviously translate a field. So for example, identifier is actually a class, so we can just do classes. And you'll see that that's resource location. So you can translate that if you wanted to. I would just recommend, if you don't know what you're doing, that you just stick with yarn. Because, yeah, as I say, that is the standard. Then we have the option for data generation. I'm going to be ticking that because we are going to be doing data gen tutorials very soon. Probably after the block tutorials, we'll start with data gen. So I'm going to be ticking this one. If you don't want to do that or you don't know, then yeah, I mean, it's up to you. Basically, you can write code that will generate recipes, generate models, generate block states, all those kind of things. You can write code that will actually generate those for you. So that's what data gen is. So you can choose whether you want that or not. And then we have the split client and common sources. Personally, I am going to be doing that for these tutorials just so that it helps you to understand the idea of keeping these things separate, basically. So the client and common, we want to keep it separate. So I'm going to be ticking this one. Then we're going to go ahead and download that template. So that will just be a zip file. Now I am going to put this actually somewhere else on my computer. Let me just see if I can find where this will go. So I've got my Minecraft programming projects folder here. So I'm just going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this 1.21 tutorial mod is what I'm going to call that. We're going to go in there, and I'm just going to give that a save. And then we're going to open that, and that will show you all of these files. So what you can just do with these is you can extract that to that same folder. If you're using 7-zip, that's obviously a lot easier. I do have 7-zip installed actually, but oh well. And then once you've done that, you should be able to open this build.gradle if you ticked that thing when starting it up. or when doing the installer. If you didn't, then we can go ahead and just open IntelliJ manually. So let's go ahead and close this since we don't need that anymore. And let's go ahead and open IntelliJ. There we go. Now your starting screen is going to look a little different to mine since I already have projects open, but you should see basically 3 options. So you can create a new project, you can open a project, or you can import a project. Mine is effectively the same except I have them up here instead of in the middle. So I'm just going to open a project, and I'm just going to quickly go find where I stored my project. So you see here that mine is in my programming folder, Java Minecraft, and we have 1.21 tutorial mod, which is what I created mine to be. So I'm going to click OK, and that will go ahead and open that project, and that will do a lot of the initial things. So you will see that I have possibly a lot more things going on here than you might have. Don't worry about that. You can just ignore the things that are different for you. It shouldn't be too much different. If you're new to IntelliJ, I will kind of briefly go through what everything is, but you shouldn't be new to IntelliJ because, well, you should know Java, so you would have learned what IntelliJ is. But regardless, this is where your files are, right? On the left in this project tab. On the right, you have the Gradle tab, which is where we're going to run our Gradle tasks. And then I also have some Copilot tabs as well. Don't worry about those. In fact, I will probably want to turn that off for this project. And you'll see that Gradle down here is configuring the projects. So I have this build window down here. However, if you don't have that, you can go View, Tool Windows, and you can go Build. And you'll basically just see what that is doing. So you'll see for me it's downloading Yarn. This isn't going to take very long for me because I've already done this for another project. So it shouldn't need to download that many things. So for me, it's just downloading Yarn. So we'll let that run. And I believe that's almost complete already. So yeah, once again, it will probably be a little slower for you if this is your first time doing any of this. But that is complete for me. So we can now go ahead and expand this. We can go Source, Main, Java, and you'll see all of our stuff is in here. We also have the client as well. And you'll see we also have this data generator class because we ticked that when we created the project. If you didn't tick it, then you won't have that class. So just note that. Some of the files that are important to note is obviously build.gradle. So this is your build script. This is kind of how everything works. You shouldn't really ever need to modify this unless you're doing something out of the ordinary. For example, if you're depending on another mod, then you may need to edit this or something like that. But we don't really have anything to change in here. We can go gradle.properties, and here's where we can just change anything that we want. I am just going to up my maximum memory to 3 gig, and then I will hit that reload button that popped up there. And basically that will just give me a little more RAM to work with. Shouldn't need it, but I just like to do that anyways because I have the RAM free. We also have the settings.gradle as well, which you may need once again if you're doing more complex things, but don't worry about it. Then we have the fabric mod JSON. So if you are coming from Forge, this is effectively your mods.toml. If you're brand new here, then this is, think of this as kind of a metadata file for your mod. So it describes where everything is or what everything is. So you have, your ID here, which is your mod ID. You have the actual version of your mod. You have the name of your mod, the description of your mod, all of the authors of your mod. You have the contact details. So you have the homepage here and the sources here. You have the license. You have the icon. You have the environment, the entry points, and then all of these things. So, for example, if you ever needed to rename your main class, which is tutorial mod there, you would also need to adjust that in your main entry point, and same with client and same with data gen. And then you have the mix-ins here as well. So you see we have this mix in JSON, and then we have a client mix in JSON as well. We'll cover mix-ins in a future tutorial. Right now they're not that important. And then we also have the dependencies, so these are just the things that it depends on. So Fabric Loader, Minecraft, Java, and Fabric API. And then you also have suggestions. We can remove that because we're not going to be suggesting anything right now. So there we go. Let's close that. And then you'll see in the assets here, we have just a default icon, which was generated, I believe, through the website. So we can just go ahead and ignore that. Now, once we've done that, there are a few things we will want to do. So we're going to come into our Gradle tab here on the right. If you don't have that, you can just do View, Tool Windows, and you can go Gradle, and that will open that up for you. We're going to expand this project. We're going to go Tasks, and inside of here, we're going to go Fabric. And what we're going to want to do is run the Gen Sources task. Now, you have a few options here. I'm actually going to do Gen Sources with Vineflower, since I personally think Vineflower is a little bit better, but you can choose to do Fernflower, CFR, or just Gen Sources normally. It's completely up to you. I'm going to do it with Vineflower because that will use more of my CPU, so it's in theory a little bit faster because it is multi-threaded. So we'll just let that do that. That's actually going to be really quick for me because I've already decompiled mine. So it's going to hit all of those, and you see it's only got 3 misses for me, which is nice. So I'll just let that run. There you go. Mine was 24 seconds. It won't be 24 seconds for you. It may be minutes. It could possibly even be up to 30 minutes, maybe, depending on how good your computer is, basically. So for me, it's pretty fast. Another thing you may want to do as well is run the download assets task. Usually that happens during run client, but I've had circumstances where it has run but failed, or maybe it just hasn't run at all, which I don't even know how that's possible. But regardless, it happens sometimes, so I just like to run it manually anyways. And then we can just go ahead and run client. So we can run the run client task. And from now on, when you want to run client, you can access it from up here. Alternatively, you can just do the Minecraft client configuration. That's perfectly fine too. You can just run that. If you don't have that there, then what you may want to do is just File, Invalidate Caches, and just restart. And then you'll probably see that is there afterwards. I'm just going to be using the Gradle task, but it's effectively the same.
Press Enter to enable the narrator.
Thank you, narrator. I do not need you. And you see we're in 1.21, so obviously we can create a world. We can go creative mode, create a new world. And that's it. We're now in 1.21 with Fabric. So in the next tutorial, we'll make an item, just a very basic item. And yeah, we'll move on from there. We'll then go blocks. We'll then do data gen and possibly mix-ins and some other exciting things as well. So yeah, I hope you guys found this useful. Obviously, I know it's been a while since I've done any tutorials, but I've kind of just been waiting for 1.21. I know I said I was going to do a multi-block tutorial, but then 1.21 was announced to be released on the 13th. So I thought, is there really any point? It's going to take me more than 2 weeks to finish that series. So I just decided we'll wait and we'll start fresh with Fabric, and hopefully we'll get to do multi-blocks in Fabric instead, which should be exciting because I haven't done that myself yet either. So we'll get around to that at some point as well. But yeah, as I say, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.